It's crunch time in FIM CEV Repsol with championships there to be won or lost over a weekend of action here at MotorLand Aragon. After a foray in Portugal and a double race day in Jerez, we arrive here in Aragon with biting winds offering a totally different challenge to the sunshine of Andalusia and the Algarve. Torrential rain and heavy wind yesterday has thrown up more than a few surprises in qualifying, with conditions once again more than likely to play a leading role in today's drama. Jack Appleyard and Lewis Sotheby here with you all weekend long with European Moto2 and Junior World Championship action on the bill and coming your way very shortly. But our opening race of the day, Lewis, the first of three for the ankle biters in the European Talent Cup.
Yeah, an exciting weekend ahead. Good morning, Jack. Good morning, everyone. Championships on the line, as you mentioned, this weekend, starting with the class that we're about to watch.
And at the moment, it's David Alonso in pole position, the Colombian 52 points clear after continuing his run of such impressive form at Jerez. He picked up the opening 3 victories of the year, 2 in Estoril, 1 in Portimao, and then in race 1 in Jerez, it was once again David Alonso who took victory, despite that man there, the number 84, Zonta van den Goorbergh, taking the checkered flag. In race 2, it was once again the Dutchman versus the Colombian as they went toe-to-toe on the last lap in typical European Talent Cup style. 5 men went into the first corner with nobody knowing who was going to come out of it first. And surprisingly, it was that man, Marco Morelli, that took a career first win, having gone into the final corner in 4th place. The final race of the weekend saw another bit of drama at the final corner with a penalty going the way of Angel Piqueras, which we'll talk about shortly. But it was the Super B, the Dutchman of Zonta van den Goorbergh, that at long last finally took a European Talent Cup victory. He drags himself into championship contention, but it is definitely that man right there, the number 80, the Aspar rider of David Alonso, 52 points clear. He's yet to finish outside of the top 2, Lewis.
Yeah, he's been sensational this season. He's just putting himself in the right position at the right time everywhere, which, as we've seen in Hawker's European Talent Cup, is easier said than done. Safest place is at the front, and David Alonso has been at the front more than most this year.
He'll start this one from 3rd on the grid. Pole position going the way of Zonta van den Goorbergh, his sparring partner from Jerez. With the man in the middle of the front row, an Australian, Harrison Voigt, part of the Marco Simoncelli SIC58 Squadra Corse concern. A first ever front row for the Australian. Great performance from him. But understandably, we will be focusing on the number 80. In terms of championships, we've mentioned it a couple of times already. He's not going to do it today. Pretty much, there's 2 races at our season finale in Valencia. So with just the 1 race tomorrow, he needs to leave Aragon with a lead of 50 points or more, and he will be crowned our 2020 champion. There's the championship standings. Makes it a lot easier for you to look at rather than for me to explain. But it certainly is checkmate at the moment to David Alonso. Whether he'll be able to have that crown placed upon his head by the time we leave Aragon tomorrow evening, well, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I suppose the simplest way of describing it is for Fernandez to stay in contention this weekend, he has to gain 3 points or more this weekend to stay alive going to Valencia. And this man, the pole sitter, Zonta van den Goorbergh, has to gain 10 points on Alonso across the 3 races so far that we've got to come this weekend. And so far this weekend, it looks like he's got every chance of doing so. Feels perhaps like there's the slight inkling of a change in the balance of power in this class. Van den Goorbergh, of course, did actually cross the line in the lead twice at Jerez, but only got 1 victory to show for it thanks to a post-race track limits penalty. But he's looking very, very strong indeed.
He takes pole position, and this is what he had to say yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, the qualifying was pretty good. In QP1 I put my fastest lap in, and in QP2 it was raining so nobody could beat it anymore. At the end I put a good lap time already in QP1, then in the end everybody went out with a new set again. And in the last flying lap I had, I put my fastest lap in and 3.5 cents faster than everybody, so pretty good.
Monaco-born Dutchman speaks better English than me and you, Lewis. Of course, the son of former 500cc Grand Prix competitor Jurgen van den Goorbergh And he's doing a pretty good run so far of showcasing him may be able to emulate in his father's footsteps as we go throughout the years.
Yeah, good genes. I think you can say that for Zonta. Speaking of riders who are impressing us, here's one, Harrison Voigt starting second on the grid. That's his first front row in the class for the young Australian. And he's building on a really good run of form. His first ETC podium last time at Jerez, and he's gradually building and building as the year goes on. And the task for him now is to try and get away at the start and stay with that front group and maybe add to that podium from Jerez.
Yeah, the man from Queensland in Australia really making strides this year. He's a part of the Asia Talent Cups last year and this year as well. We took a 5th place in Qatar, a 3rd place, a podium in Qatar before unfortunately that season had to be curtailed because of the coronavirus pandemic, but I'm sure they'll be hoping to be back there next year. This is our championship leader, David Alonso, as you can see at the bottom of your screen there. 4 first place finishes, 2 second place finishes, a podium in race 1 here in Aragon. We'll see him match the record of consecutive European Talent Cup podiums currently held by the man in the exact same team as David Alonso, Izan Guevara. He, of course, will be coming onto the grid in about an hour or so's time for the Junior Moto3 World Championship. But it's currently Izan, his teammate, that holds the record of 7, but with a podium here, David Alonso will be able to go level with him. Yeah,
it feels like that record is under threat. Here's one of the riders who are looking to try and stop that from happening, Ivan Ortolo, who starts at the front of the second row of the grid. He's another rider who we saw on that, we maybe didn't see on that graphic, but he's still in championship contention too. He's just a couple of points behind Van den Goorbergh, who sits 3rd at the moment. Ortolo, as you can see on your screen, sits 4th. Perhaps left a few points on the table this season. Of course, when we last commentated together, Jack, at Estoril, of course, came unstuck with a long lap penalty, which cost him a number of points, which, you know, ifs and buts in motor racing, but hand those back to him, and he's possibly 2nd in the points at the moment. So, big weekend for Ortola, and yeah, he's another rider who'll certainly be looking to fight at the front.
Yeah, he certainly will be. That is his best qualifying of 2020 so far. We mentioned Estoril, where he was 2nd in one race and 2nd in the other before he was handed a long lap penalty. He qualified 5th in that one and was able to be right up in podium contention, so I'm sure we'll be hoping for more of the same here at Aragon. We're very shortly going to see the man that will start from the middle of the second row of the grid. This man right here, the number 49 of Julian Garcia, just 13 years of age, is a man from Malaga in Spain. And he's another man that is showing real progress this year. We'll be able to see his results at the bottom of the screen very shortly. Currently 11th in the championship at the moment, having picked up a best finish in the final race at Jerez. Started that one 22nd on the grid, benefited from a red flag and a restart, but he eventually came across the line in 4th. A super ride that I'm sure has given him a whole host of confidence coming into this one.
Yeah, crashing warm-up though this morning for Garcia, so hopefully that hasn't knocked his confidence too much, because as you say, it was a sensational ride in the final race that we saw at Jerez. As we mentioned, the red flag did come out, which did help him a bit, but of course he had gained a lot of places already, which put him in position to then fight in that leading group in the 5-lap dash for the cash that we saw for the win in the final race of the weekend back at Jerez. Next to him on the second row, completing the second row, as we'll see in a moment, is the 83 of Alvaro Carpe, another 13-year-old. He hails from Murcia. And yeah, he's another rider who's making steady progress as the year goes on, but he'll be looking to build on a best of 8 so far, which came on his very first start in this class back at Estoril.
We can see from this camera shot here just how windy it is in Aragon at the moment. Nowhere near as bad as yesterday. It was honestly sideways wind yesterday. Not sideways wind, sideways rain. There
yes,
we go. That's
very much so. When we're talking about 2 Yorkshiremen up here who were very much wearing fleeces and struggling with the cold, you know that the temperatures and the weather is pretty grim. Yeah, we've been racing throughout the heat of summer, as our colleagues will tell you from their time out in Jerez. But we're very much in autumn and some autumnal conditions with the rain yesterday. Very windy, as you mentioned, at the moment. It's set fair, we think, for today. No rain expected. A slight chance of some rain tomorrow, but it looks as if we're going to get away with the worst of the conditions yesterday.
There's Jürgen van der Goorbergh behind his son Zonta there. A few last-minute words of advice to him. And I was starting to think whether I might have gone soft yesterday, Lewis, because I got into our lovely hire car with leather seats to work out that it had heated seats and a heated steering wheel, and I couldn't wait to put it on. I thought, that's surely not right, is it, for a Yorkshireman out in Spain to be wanting to dive into a car and put heated seats on? But anyway, maybe I have just gone soft. But luckily, the sun is starting to shine. It's still pretty nippy out there, to be honest, as well. And the wind is a huge factor for these European Talent Cup guys. Down the back straight, which is near a kilometre long, with the wind as strong as it was yesterday, it wasn't really a straight because the guys were having to lean into the wind. It was a crosswind the whole way down, and suddenly it turned into a kilometre long left-hander just in order to go in a straight line. Anyway, the wind has settled down. Here's the grid for our opening race of the weekend here in Aragon, with Zonta van den Goorbergh on pole position. Joining him on the front row, Harrison Voigt and David Alonso. Row 2 the grid, Ivan Ortola, Julio Garcia and Alvaro Carpe, with row 3 being Marco Morelli, Alberto Fernandez and Juan Rodriguez.
Row 4 sees Tapia, Cruces and Farioli. 13th on the grid is Angel Piqueras. Now, he took a 6th-place grid penalty yesterday, and remember, he has to take a long lap penalty as well in the early stages of this race. He has Sacco and Milan alongside him, with Rulstone, Sandoval and Vaya on row 6.
Going back onto row 7 of the grid, we have Scott, Bertrand, Planks, Rodriguez, Rial and Pawelec, the Polish rider, on row 8 of the grid. Back onto row 9, we'll find one of the Malaysian competitors as well. You can see it's a European Talent Cup, but certainly a global field.
It is. Volpi, Peran and Trias on row 10, ahead of Collins, Pasyuk and the second of the Poles, Pawelec, with the American Gigolov, Tagliarini and Henri, the new Frenchman, into the field on row 16. And completing the field in 37th is the newcomer Quintans Sanz, who was underweight after Q1 yesterday, so didn't get a lap time in the one dry session we saw yesterday.
A couple of penalties that we might have mentioned there, most notably to Angel Piqueras. He will start this race from 13th, despite having qualified in 7th. That's because of that incident we might have seen in the highlights earlier, where he took out his teammate Marco Morelli and Adrian Cruces as well. But the penalty doesn't stop there, because within the first 3 laps of the race, he has to take a long lap penalty, which is situated on the outside of turns 9 and then back into 10. So Piqueras handed a 6th-place grid penalty and a long lap penalty as well for that incident in the final race at Jerez.
Yeah, you'll think he'll want to get that out of the way as early as he can, maybe even on the first lap if he's actually got the space and the space on track to do so, because it's going to be pretty close and compact, of course, on the opening lap. The final corner, though, here, it's interesting because Piqueras has that penalty because of an accident at the final corner last time out in Jerez. And you do wonder whether the last corner here lends itself to a similar kind of bold, aggressive move. It's not quite a slower corner. It's a long, sort of winding double apex left. But because the finish line here is very, very close to the final corner, you'll have seen on the start line as they left the grid, the start line is much nearer turn 1. The finish line is just in front of us as we look out of our window on the exit of the final corner. So it's pretty likely, not certain, but pretty likely, if you lead out of the last corner, you will get to the line first. So a lot of riders will be scrambling on that long back straight to try and get themselves into that last corner ahead.
Those are the conditions here that these guys are having to battle their way through. 15-mile-an-hour winds, air temperature of 15 degrees Celsius as well, with the track temperature not much higher than that as well. It's a fairly chilly morning here in Alcañiz in northeastern Spain, but hopefully it might warm up during the day. Looking out of our commentary box window, there are a few grey clouds that are just looming in the background. I'm not sure whether they're looking thick enough to actually cause any problems with rain throughout the day, but certainly they're there to just draw our attention to them.
Yeah, that's the long lap penalty loop that you're seeing on screen. I was wondering whether Angel Piqueras would go through it on the warm-up lap just to test it out, but you could see him, you saw him briefly on the number 18, he chose not to do so. He's just choosing to do a normal warm-up lap and head over to the grid. But turn 9 and 10, that was an interesting corner yesterday, because in the wet conditions, that was a corner that caught out a lot of riders. A lot of riders went down on that downhill turn 9, the sort of reverse corkscrew style corner. We'll see if that causes any problems today, because a few riders will see that as a bit of an overtaking spot where you can sort of put a block pass on and then hold your riders off. And this is where we'll see a lot of the overtaking done. Out of turn 15, you want to have yourself nicely positioned in the slipstream down this long, kilometre-long back straight as we approach the final double apex left of turns 16 and 17.
A whole host of overtaking hotspots have you mentioned there, Lewis. Pretty much opportunities everywhere around Aragon. Turn 1, of course, into turn 5, into turn 7, 8 or 9, 12, 14, 15. I think from the years that we've been coming here, this year actually being the 10th anniversary since Grand Prix racing came to MotorLand Aragon, we've definitely seen a whole host of moves at all 17 corners throughout those 10 years. So don't be surprised, especially with these sometimes rather over-exuberant young kids flying in a move at any and every opportunity. That's your pole man, though. Weaving from left to right, the number 84 of Zonta van den Goorbergh warms up both sides of the tyres, gets the brakes nice up to temperature as well before he starts from pole position for the second race in a row.
Very, very tricky turn one here, especially if you're not at the front. As you can see, or you saw briefly there, it's a very, very short, sharp run into a very tight, slow left-hander. So if you find yourself in the middle of the pack, it's very easy to find yourself in a bit of trouble.
It's uncharted territory for the number 29 of Harrison Voigt, as well as the Australian starts from the front row of the grid for the very first time in his European Talent Cup career. Meanwhile, it's business as usual for the championship leader, David Alonso, on the outside of the front row. We're waiting for the lights on here in Aragon. They are taking an age to come on. Finally they're on, and finally they're out. And it's a bit of a wheelie from van den Goorbergh from pole position. Yellow flags in the back of the picture. Has anyone stalled it? It looks as though we're okay, though. But despite that wheelie, van den Goorbergh has already got himself 3 or 4 bike lengths into turn 1. Yeah,
I think it was the 62 of Blythe Trias further back who he got away in the end, but he took an age to get off the line. So I think the marshals understandably were exercising a bit of caution, waving the yellow flags to alert the riders behind him. So no one hit him, thankfully. But van den Goorbergh, despite that little lift off the line, he's got away out front with Alonso in hot pursuit.
That was a big moment coming from, I think it was Alvaro Carpe, who had settled into 4th place behind Marco. Is that Marco Morelli, that is, that's come through into 3rd at the moment? Yeah, it is. Morelli that's come through into 3rd from row number 3 of the grid. Great start from him. But yeah, big moment for Carpe out of the seat, and that's just allowed a little bit of a gap now between Morelli in 3rd and Harrison Voigt that's dropped back to 4th.
Bad news for Angel Piqueras. We were keeping an eye on him with his long lap penalty that he has to serve in the early stage of the race, as we already have a rider down. Piqueras, of course, has to take that long lap loop, so he's been looking to make some early progress. Unfortunately, he's down 3 places to 15th.
Almost impossible to highlight who that was that went down with no stickers whatsoever on his Honda 250 machine there, but hopefully we'll get an indication very shortly. We can see obviously that he was okay, which is the most important thing. Back at the front though, and van den Goorbergh is looking like he wants to check out here. Yeah,
he's been quick right throughout pre-practice. There's a few more riders down. That's a corner that can easily catch people out. That's the 21 of Dean Berta, cousin of Maverick Vinales, who's down at 12. But as we saw briefly, he wasn't the only one.
Yeah, a few others caught up in that one as well. We didn't manage to catch any numbers, but it looks as though it was those guys fighting just at the outside of the top 15 at the moment. There's Ivan Ortoli there. He's come up into 4th place at the moment with Morelli and Alonso battling over 2nd. Morelli had it, Alonso now has it. And here are the other guys that have gone down. That's one of the Realia Vintia guys as well. Was that the number 50? I think it was. It could well be, just looking through. And it could well be Noah Detweiler, I think, that might have gone down. And it is. We were chatting with Noah yesterday. He didn't enjoy qualifying in the dry, but he was 2nd fastest in the wet. Was hoping for some rain today. Unfortunately, it hasn't come. And his race has ended pretty early as well. Disappointment for the young man from Switzerland.
His lead for van den Goorbergh already, 0.9 of a second at the end of the first lap, and that's crucial for him because, as we've already seen with Alonso and Morelli down that back straight, if you're in slipstream range down that last long back straight to the last corner, you're pretty much a sitting duck, the rider in front. But van den Goorbergh's already put himself way out of range of that. Ortolis holds station in 4th. Harrison Voigt down 3 places, unfortunately, to 5th, with Julian Garcia, who started on 2nd row, in 6th at the moment.
Yeah, this is super impressive from van den Goorbergh, but Morelli and Alonso can see him starting to pull away. Morelli means business because through that first sector, it's the fastest we've seen anybody in the early stages of this race, able to pull back 0.2 of a second as he tries to draw the Dutchman back in.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be interesting to see as the sector time's already on this lap. Morelli and Alonso, maybe they're going to work together and try and claw this leader back in. They have pulled back a couple of tenths in the first sector of this lap. But it's this everlasting problem in Moto3 style racing, which of course these Moto3 bikes in the Hawkers European Talent Cup. If you're too busy racing each other, you're just losing time hand over fist to the rider in front, as we see another couple of riders running a little bit wide through 12. So it's very important for Morelli and Alonso here just to get in their rhythm, just try not to mess each other up too much. And once they get onto this back straight, just tow each other up the straight and try and eat into that lead of van den Goorbergh, which is already over 1 second.
The same goes for Ivan Ortola and Alvaro Carpe in 4th and 5th at the moment. You can see these guys here have managed to detach themselves ever so slightly from Harrison Voigt in 7th, because those guys behind were really messing themselves up and allowing Morelli and Alonso to escape from them in the fight for the podium places. We can see Alonso still leads the way in 2nd place. Let's just see as they come across the line whether that gap has been able to come down. It was 0.9 the last time they came across the line. Goorbergh will cross the line now with Morelli and Alonso side by side as they cross the line, and the advantage has actually gone up by 0.2 of a second. It's now 1.1 the advantage for Goorbergh.
But in that final sector alone, interestingly, Alonso was 0.3 faster than the leader, so that just shows the value of the slipstream that he had. Of course, he's now going to have it again shortly because he's lost 2nd place again to Morelli. I think these two riders are more just focusing on each other at the moment rather than the Dutchman who's disappearing into the distance. We've had confirmation on our screens that there are no jump starts. The only jump of sorts we saw was Goorbergh jumping the front wheel off the ground as he left the grid, but of course it didn't slow him down too much. We're keeping an eye again on Piqueras. He has jumped up to 10th now on the 2nd lap, so I think we can be safe in the knowledge that he hasn't taken the long lap penalty yet. He'll have to take it this lap.
Alvaro Carpe there, the number 83, is having his best ride of the year by a considerable margin. The Hawkers Fire Network Talent Team rider coming into this one has had a best of 8th in his rookie season, and he's now going to ride around the outside of the championship leader, David Alonso. Well, the 13-year-old from Mercy has certainly got plenty of confidence to ride around the outside of David Alonso through turn 9 and 10 Marc Marquez corner. Certainly takes a bit of bottle, and he's certainly showed it there.
Yeah, a move Marc Marquez himself would have been proud of that. It's very rare you see riders overtake around the outside in these classes, but boy did he do it there. Terrific move from Carpe. And Alonso already, that record that we were teeing up before the race, has already been put in a little bit of threat. With Goorbergh out front, he still is maintaining that lead and just edging away ever so slightly as this battle rages behind him. It's now up to a 2.5 seconds with a huge group of riders now as we see the slipstream in effect once again. Carpe is now going for 2nd place and he takes that pretty easily. Alonso might try and follow him through, but he's still too far back.
Well, the diminutive debutant is absolutely flying at the moment. Started from the outside of the 2nd row of the grid. His second row start of the season, but he's putting it to much better use than what he did in Estoril, because he's caught Alonso, caught Morelli, passed both of them, and now he's setting his sights on Goorbergh. He's already managed to eke out about 1/10 or so over Morelli. Great ride coming from the number 83, only 13 years of age. This is his 1st year in the European Talent Cup, and by far and away the best performance we've seen from him so far this year.
He might not be done there, by the way, either, Jack. He just set the fastest lap of the race. So he was half a second quicker than the race leader. Now, of course, he did get a bit of a tow down the back straight to help him with that, but even so, Carpe is flying. And we'll see whether he can either leave this group behind him entirely or pull them back in. We're keeping an eye again on Piqueras. We're having it flashing up on our timing screens now that he has the long lap penalty. Whether that's because he hasn't served the one he's already got and whether he's being handed another one, we'll have to wait and see. But we're still waiting for Piqueras to take that, because you'll see him as they come through this corner. He's just at the back of this group. In fact, there he is, top of the screen, just leading that 2nd group in 9th position.
Well, we are now on lap 3 of the race. So he has to take it now, and we've just gone through turn 9, and I didn't see him in the back of the picture, so I think he might be in a little bit of bother here, Angel Piqueras, because he certainly can't have taken it to be able to be in 9th place.
Personal best in that sector as well.
Well,
so he definitely didn't take it, did he? So, yeah, he might be in a little bit of hot water there, Piqueras.
Oh, big moment, and David Alonso's gone down. The championship leader tugs the front, and David Alonso crashes out here in Aragon. Drama in the European Talent Cup. The man that hasn't finished out of the top 2 all year long is now down in the gravel.
And that really opens the championship all of a sudden. That 52-point lead that he had over Alberto Fernandez, who's struggling at the moment, down in 10th. All of a sudden, a real opportunity presents itself for the likes of Fernandez and Goorbergh, who's leading the race. Don't worry about that graphic on screen, which tells you it's Carpe that's crashed. He's still safe in 2nd place. It's the 80 of Alonso who's trying to empty the gravel out of his Aspar bike.
2nd attempt from our graphics guys and still got it wrong. 3rd time lucky, guys. It's the number 80 of David Alonso that's gone down. And as you rightly say, that blows the championship wide open. 63 points adrift is Zonta van den Goorbergh at the moment. Well, if he can cut another 25 off that, suddenly he is well in contention with another race this afternoon and then a third race on Sunday as well.
He is, although he might have to have a bit of work on his hands here as Alonso now tries to rejoin the race. He looks like he's got a bit of a forlorn chance of doing that, and he's already, I think, way out of contention to try and score any points. We're going to see this crash again.
He almost saved it. He almost saved it. You can see he had it on his knee for a while, and then eventually it just let go. Front end, oh, look at that. He held it for so long, did the young Colombian, before the front end eventually gave way through turn 13.
Yeah, Alfonso Carpe fans had another hard stack as the referee came up, but let me give you some better news for him. He's just pulled another half a second back on Zonta van den Goorbergh. Look at that, you can see it visually now. He's so much closer. He's now just 6/10 behind the leader. So we talk about Zonta van den Goorbergh, understandably, as the man who could make a huge dent into Alonso's championship lead, but he might have a bit of fight on his hands from this young man yet to even get the victory at all.
Huge surprise this would be if Alvaro Carpe can challenge for the win. As we said, his best result coming into here was an 8th place finish. He's never really looked like challenging at the front all year long, and suddenly he's found some speed and a half here in Aragon to be able to be closing in on our race leader Zonta van den Goorbergh. Hand over fist. Yellow flag still waving there through turn 14. I think that's as they clear up David Alonso's crash. So just checking, I don't think anybody made any moves with those yellow flags waving, thankfully. And once again, Carpe, fastest through that third sector. He's pulled another 10th in. He's going to be with him in a couple of laps. He is, absolutely. And this, he'll now start to pick up that slipstream. He was fastest man of anybody in sector 3, which is the sector that starts and ends just as they come onto that back straight. And we'll keep an eye on it as they come across the line now. Whether that gap has closed, and even so, it looks a lot closer as he comes out of the final corner. Alvaro Carpe now trails by just 0.4 of a second. Another new fastest lap, a 2:04.0. And it's not like Van den Goorbergh's slowing. He's done his personal best on that last lap of 2:04.2, but it was still a 1/4 of a second slower than the flying Carpe. Brilliant from Alvaro Carpe here. He's still got 9 laps to go, and he's right with him now. He's right there, is the young Spaniard, on the tail of the number 84 of Zonta van den Goorbergh. Meanwhile, these guys aren't helping themselves. Morelli, Voigt and Ortola all in the scrap for the final podium place. And the fact that they're fighting as hard as they are has just allowed Carpe to clear off. If they could have tucked in behind him, well, I'm not sure they'd have been able to go with him anyway at the pace that he's showing, but they certainly could have tried a lot harder than they have done. Yeah, Ortola was in the wars a little bit there. I think that was Adrian Kreutzes going inside of him through the winding right-hander of turn 7. So Ortola is another rider who will see this. He'll have seen his teammate disappear off to the left-hand side as we now see a change once again for third. That's Harrison Voigt coming through, going past Morelli into third position. But Ortola is another rider, as I mentioned, who will be seeing this as a big opportunity to close in on his teammate in the championship standings. And at the moment, well, 5th place for him. That would only see him gain 11 points, and he'll be wanting to take a bigger chunk than that. Good ride this coming from Adrian Kreutzes as he gets himself up into 4th place, starting from 11th on the grid, and he slowly but surely got himself into contention. I think this is the first time we've actually mentioned him in the race. He sort of popped up from nowhere to be able to be in contention for that final podium place. Back at the front, and it was a small error there from Zonta van den Goorbergh, just ever so slightly wide through turn 14, allows Adrian Kreutzes just to get that little bit closer. These two are going to fight right down to the final lap. They're going to fight right now, I think. Here he comes. Kreutzes got the draft, and he's got the inside line as well. And for the first time here in Aragon, there's a change at the lead as the 83 moves in front of the 84. Kreutzes hits the front and leads a European Talent Cup race for the first time in his young career. Van den Goorbergh will probably be as surprised as anybody, saying, well, how is the number 83 coming up the inside of me? I might have expected the number 80 to be bearing down. And we don't know, because we haven't seen the pit board, whether Van den Goorbergh has been told that Alonso is out. You'd think the team would have put that on his pit board to let him know. But now he's got a bigger threat on his hands. It's not the 80, it's the 83. This fight for the final podium place. Our graphics, unfortunately, as they came across the line, a little bit out of date now, which is always the case in European Talent Cup because it changes lap after lap, corner after corner. It's now Marco Morelli that leads that fight, with Harrison Voigt demoted to 4th, having come across the line in 3rd. Ortola's still there as well, as is Adrian Kreutzes. And don't discount the man just off the back of that gaggle of riders as well. We've not really mentioned him too often, the number 49 of Julian Garcia, He was the man that battled through from 22nd on the grid to 4th in Jerez last time out. He's not had to do just as much hard work this time, having started from 5th, but he's certainly well in contention for a first ever podium finish.
Very noticeable look behind there as they approached turn 8 from Zonta van den Goorbergh. He was following Carpe, who did another new fastest lap of the race last night. He's into the 2:03s now, which is just a couple of tenths shy of the lap record around here in Hawker's European Talent Cup. We've been mentioning Picaros a couple of times. I can confirm to you now he has taken that long lap penalty. On that last lap, he dropped 3 seconds, all of which came in the second sector, which is where that long lap penalty is situated. So Picaros now has finally served his sentence from the last round. And we mentioned, actually, Adrian Kreutzes, who's impressing us. He was one of the big riders who suffered from that because he was taken out at the final corner when he was fighting for a podium position, and he's fighting for one again here.
As was Morelli as well. Both of them were the unfortunate culprits of that incident from Angel Piqueras. Morelli, the most unfortunate of the two. Piqueras T-bones the rear end of Kreutzes, and Morelli was just on the outside minding his own business, and suddenly he got an Estrella Galicia Talent Team machine to the chops, and it took him out, the poor lad. So we'll be hoping for less sort of drama this time around. Back at the front there, and now 8 laps remaining in Aragon, and Zonta van den Goorbergh has found himself a second win to bite back and retake the lead over Alvaro Carpe.
Yeah, he did. As mentioned on that last lap, we did see him take a very long look behind him, so he will now be absolutely clear in his mind that it's just Carpe that has to worry about. There's a 3.3 second gap, as you can see on the top left of your screen, to the group that are fighting for third place, these 5 riders who have got the final podium position in their sight. So Van den Goorbergh knows that he basically just has to worry about the 83 of Carpe, and it's going to be interesting to see now whether he feels it's going to be a battle to the flag. You think it will be from here, although Van den Goorbergh now, as you say, has found a second wind, and he's now starting to stretch the young 83 of Carpe and try and up the pace again. Has Carpe got the pace now to respond?
Well, Carpe's just had a big look over his left-hand shoulder as well. It looks as though this is a really, really mature ride coming from Zonta van den Goorbergh. He'll have been watching his pit board, seeing his advantage cut down lap after lap after lap. Eventually, Carpe's caught him and passed him, and he's had a breather, he's refocused, and he's decided to go again, and now he's pulling clear. He's pulled out an impressive 0.4 of a second in the first sector alone. This is definitely Zonta van den Goorbergh's charge towards a second victory. Yeah,
it is, and as we're looking now at Carpe, there's a lot of space ahead of him. He's not right on the back of Van den Goorbergh, so it looks like this is a real response from the young Dutchman. Of course, those 0.4 that he gained in that first sector included the overtake, so a very, very strong start to the lap from Van den Goorbergh. Just keeping an eye on that battle for the final podium position. Morelli leads it at the moment with Voigt and Kreutzes right behind him. Ortola and Julio Garcia complete that group. Next up, we have another Australian. We've talked about Voigt, but we haven't talked much about Jacob Rulstone, who is in that second group, or that second big group on the field. You can see him just at the top of the screen. He's battling with Hugo Milan and the other championship contender who's struggling relatively in this race. You'll see him now on screen, the 54 of Fernandez.
9th place at the moment for Alberto Fernandez. His worst result of the year so far was 7th last time out in Jerez. That is not the result he would wanted by any stretch of the imagination, especially given the fact that he's seen David Alonso go down. He knows what an opportunity this is. I think at the moment, the best that he can hope for is 8th place, because that's the front of the gaggle of riders, and really there's no chance with only 6 laps remaining. He's going to close down on the 5 seconds to the rear wheel of Julio Garcia, in 7th place.
Yeah, also in that group involving Fernandez, we have Tapia and Ruda. Tapia is one of the fastest riders on that last lap. He did a personal best at 2:04.6, which was faster than everyone ahead of him, with the exception of the 2 leaders who changed positions again.
Well, despite pulling out 0.4 of a second earlier in the lap, Zonta van den Goorbergh clearly made a bit of a mistake somewhere, because it allowed Carpe to close right back in onto the rear wheel of the Dutchman. Now 5.5 laps remaining here in Aragon. We're getting down towards business time, and it's the 84 versus the 83 for victory in the first of 3 races in the ETC.
And I think we've had the answer to the question that I was asking myself and was about to ask on air with Carpe. Because his best result so far in this class this year was an 8th place on debut at Estoril, would he decide that a podium would do him just fine and just stick behind the relatively experienced, albeit still rather inexperienced, Van den Goorbergh? He's certainly not taking that approach, as we see Morelli once again making a move on Harrison Voigt. These two are going to fight all the way to the flag for the final podium position. Of course, Voigt is looking for podiums in consecutive weekends. Took his first podium in the first of the Jerez races last time out, and he's looking to do so in the first of 3 races here this weekend at Aragon.
I was going to say, if you would like a swift response to that question, I think it's a very simple no. Alvaro Carpe, at 13 years of age in his debut season, won't be settling for second place.
No, he might have that decision taken out of his hands here by Goorbergh, who's trying to up the pace again, and just seeing what this young Spaniard has in response. What we've seen so far is that he's got a response to just about everything, Carpe, and he's caught us all by surprise. As they cross the line now, we've got just 5 laps to go, and there's nothing to choose between them on pace or on track. Just a tenth of a second separates them as they fan out 3 abreast into turn 1 now. And it looks like Voigt has the advantage as Cruzes now goes at the inside of Morelli to take 4th place.
Well, what a fight this is for 3rd at the moment. It's not for the lead, unfortunately, but it's one hell of a ding-dong between these 5 riders. At the moment, I think your best bet at predicting who's going to take that final podium place is putting 3 names in a hat and just pulling one out. That's the easiest you'll be able to get to a sensible prediction between these 5. As you rightly say, Lewis, it's Harrison Voigt, the Australian, currently leading that one, but Ortola's there in second. The experienced Ivan Ortola. He's already got 5 podiums to his name, including 3 victories, all of which he took last season as well. He's a championship contender, we can't forget, as Harrison Voigt takes a huge look over his shoulder and sees that the number 48 is right with him. I'm sure that will have been quite the fright to look over his shoulder and see the 48 staring down the barrel. Yeah,
I don't think he'll see anything there that surprised him after the race he's had so far. All he'll have seen is danger as you look behind him. There, we've had a crash, unfortunately, for the 78, the American Damian Jigolov. He's gone down at turn 13. He is back in the race, but he's running at the back of the field at the moment. No change, as you can see here, for the leaders as Goorbergh continues to lead from Carpe. The lead, occasionally it stretches out, but it never stretches out to more than 3 or 4 tenths. And that's not really enough, is it, Jack? Once you come onto this long back straight, that just disappears again straight away.
What's happened to Harrison Voigt here? He's dropped down from 3rd place all the way down to 6th now. He was leading that battle for 3rd just 3 or 4 corners ago, but suddenly it's Ortola that's leading the way with Cruzes and Morelli tucked in behind him. Harrison Voigt, he's lost, what, 6-8 tenths of a second through that 3rd sector, so he's definitely run wide and made a mistake somewhere. Meanwhile, what a fight that is for 8th place.
That's incredible, isn't it? That pretty much takes you. There'll be riders in that group who won't even score points today, even though they're fighting for as high as 8th place as the 2 Leopard riders go head-to-head of Ruda and Tapia, and they've lost in the end to the 44, I think that is, of Hugo Milan, who goes past them at the inside. So easily done that in the final corner. You can be watching another rider, and all of a sudden 2 or 3 will take you by surprise as you go in another final corner. This looks like the first lap, first corner of a race, but it's actually just 4 to go. It's now the 69 of Ruda who has the advantage, but so much more racing to be done here.
Well, the man on the back of the pack there is the number 7 of Filippo Fariola, the Leglise Academy rider. He's 18th at the moment, but could, in the next 4 laps, find himself up to 8th place. Meanwhile, from the opposite end, Alberto Fernandez, that was leading that gaggle of riders and would pick up a vital 8 points that would see him cut the championship lead of David Alonso down to 44, now finds himself in 12th. This is a nightmare situation for Alberto Fernandez. He won't get a better opportunity, or hasn't had a better opportunity all year long, to try and close David Alonso's championship lead. And to be quite frank, at the moment, he's squandering it.
He is, and just to give you a bit of context on that, those 11 riders who are in that group fighting for 8th position as they cross the line, just 1.2 seconds covered them.
Incredible, incredible. But it's what we've got used to in European Talent Cup. Meanwhile, is that Angel Piqueras, is it? It's 2 riders that weren't in contention at the front of the field, because that's a Dynavolt Intact GP junior team.
It's Sharil, I think, the 36, who's dropping down our timing screens.
And Tyler
Scott, the American on the Talent Team Estrella Galicia, by the 14-year-old American. He's out of the race, unfortunately, as well. That is, as you just saw, down at turn 2.
The pair of them were battling for a place inside the top 20, I believe, so disappointment for the pair of them. Hopefully, number 36 of Sharil is okay, as he will look to be getting a little bit of medical attention. 3.5 laps remaining here in Aragon, though. In the fight for 3rd place, it's currently Morelli that holds it this time around. Ortola's there, but as is Harrison Voigt as well, looking to squeeze up the inside of Adrian Cruzes and Marco Morelli and Ivan Ortola as well. Surely he's not pulled that one off, and I think he has as well. Harrison Voigt picks up 3 places places at the final corner, and we've now just 3 laps remaining. He leads that fight for third place, but not for long, because from absolutely nowhere, there goes the number 49 of Julio Garcia into third.
Yeah, from the front of that group to near enough the back. You can now see him on the outside, unfortunately, of Morelli and Cruz says. You cross the line in third position. About 100 metres down the road, you're now back in 6th or 7th position. So timing is everything in this class. So there's a long way to go yet. Ortola might be the rider who's actually in a decent position, just sat at the back of that group. He's about to find himself with a 4-rider slipstream as he comes onto the back straight. But with 2.5 laps to go now, this one's going to go all the way to the line. And it's now going to get into that little tactical game of where do you position yourself going onto that back straight on the final lap. And that's the question that these 2 riders will also be asking. Goorbergh leads it at the moment by 1/4 of a second. Is that enough of a lead if he comes out of turn 15 on the last lap to hold Carpe off into the last corner? Or do you want to be the rider in second, exiting that penultimate left-hander?
I think with the gap as it is right now, Goorbergh has got enough there. That gap is big enough where it's going to take either a mistake through turn 15 on the run down that 1 kilometre long back straight from Goorbergh, or something quite extraordinary from Carpe to be able to close the distance. I think at 1/4 of a second, now up to 1/2 a second, incidentally, having pulled out a further 1/4 of a second in sector 2. Goorbergh is looking pretty comfortable at the front at the moment, but anything can change in the final 2 laps of this one. Meanwhile, in this battle for third, that's a brave move from Voigt as he tries to squeeze up the inside of Cruzes through turn 15. It's still Julio Garcia that leads that one, and this could be a brilliant ride from Garcia. For the vast majority of this race, he's been quite happy to sit there in 7th place on the back of the group, watching the 4 in front take the gloves off and throw punches left, right and centre, and then he's just picked his moment to slowly but surely cruise through into 3rd place, and now he's looking to stretch that gap out. Because at the moment, from 3rd to 7th, that's the biggest we've seen for quite some time. It looks as though Garcia's pace at the front is a little bit too hot to handle for the guys behind.
Big lap this now for Carpe. We'll now find out if he's got anything left for Zonta Goorbergh. He lost 4/10 of a second on that last lap to the race leader. That's why the lead is now up around 6/10, and that's simply not enough for Carpe if he wants to take that first win. But as we mentioned, a sensational ride for him. This would be his first ever podium and his best result in this class by 6 places. And if he does take another look around him, he'll know that there is absolutely no threat behind, because there's another 5.8 seconds to this battle led by Garcia. We see the 95 of Morelli behind him. He, of course, missed out on a podium in rather unfortunate circumstances at the last round when he was tagged by his teammate, having won earlier in the weekend. It looks like he's going to try and join the top 2 on the podium once again here. Voigt is still in 5th, Ortola in 6th. At the moment, it's Cruzes at the back of that pack. And it looks now, as we look at this leading group, as if finally Carpe has either settled for second or he's simply not got the late race pace of Goorbergh. Yeah,
it looks as though that elastic has eventually snapped between the rear wheel of Goorbergh and the front wheel of Alvaro Carpe. Goorbergh now a second clear of the 13-year-old Spaniard. It's his to lose as we edge towards the final lap of the race. Meanwhile, this is the fight for 8th place with the number that we need to look out for, the 54 of Alberto Fernandez. I think that's in there in 10th place at the moment, with Angel Piqueras in front of him. The Piqueras, of course, who has taken a long lap penalty in this race, and he just gets it a little bit sideways there. Does Fernandez into turn 14 and forces teammates Sacco and Rulston both to sit up as a result. Meanwhile, oh no, disaster! The number 49 of Julio Garcia's gone down. I can't see where exactly he's gone down, but the man that was in 3rd place has crashed out at turn 14. Oh, what a nightmare with just 2 laps remaining. The Spaniard on course for a debut podium finish has thrown it away.
Yeah, unfortunately, and the big beneficiary of that is Harrison Voigt at the moment, but as you could quite clearly see, now only 4 riders in this group fighting for 3rd, as opposed to the 5 that we had before. And we've had confirmation on our time screens that Garcia has indeed stopped out on track. He's tumbling and tumbling down our timing screens. So opportunity knocks now for Voigt, Morelli, Cruzes and Ortola, who are maybe perhaps starting to lose touch with the 49, unfortunately, Garcia. But now Morelli takes over in that third position. Van den Goorbergh safe and sound at the front, by the way. He's 1.7 seconds clear now of Carpe. That one looks like it's decided. Here he is. But that battle for third place, still plenty of racing to be done there in this last half a lap.
It looks as though it's Morelli versus Voigt for that final podium place. Both Cruces and Ortola maybe just got caught up in the crash that Julian Garcia has just had, throwing away a debut podium finish. Meanwhile, no such problems so far. Just half a lap to go for this man, Zonta van den Goorbergh, looking for back-to-back victories in the European Talent Cup, and most importantly, will cut David Alonso's championship lead from 52 points down to 38 after the Colombian crashed out in the opening stages of this one here in Aragon. A lot of credit has got to go to Alvaro Carpe as well. The young Spaniard will pick up a first ever podium for himself in his debut year in the European Talent Cup, and he pushed Zonta van den Goorbergh all the way in this one. But van den Goorbergh showed maturity beyond his years to be able to be in this position. Meanwhile, look at this fight for third place, Lewis.
We're making contact coming out of turn 15. It's Morelli who I think has the slight advantage, but on the inside of him, looks like it's coming. Cruces, he's too far back. Voigt's now going to have a go at the inside. He looks like he's timed it just to perfection.
Is he going to go in too hot, though? An opportunity possibly for Morelli to get him on the cutback. Meanwhile, at the front, it's back-to-back wins in the European Talent Cup for Zonta van den Goorbergh. A debut podium finish for Alvaro Carpe. And who will take third place? It's going to be Harrison Voigt, because there's drama at the final corner with both Morelli and Cruces crashing out.
That's 2 races in a row for Morelli that he's gone down at the final corner of the race.
And Cruces as well. The pair of them, they were both caught up in Angel Piqueras' incident in the final race at Jerez. But now they've had an
came through
incident
to
of their
5th,
own.
Jack, in the end of that. He started down in 12th place, had a long lap penalty, and came through to 5th.
What an incredible ride from the young Spaniard. Meanwhile, where is Alberto Fernandez? Where is Alberto Fernandez? Comes across the line in 7th. 7th for Fernandez, so he picks up 9 points. I think that's as good as he could have hoped for. Meanwhile, this is exactly what happened through the final corner. The incident between Morelli there, who's just been overtaken by Cruces. Is the contact? Yes, there is. Oh, it's a racing incident. I don't think it's anybody's fault, that one. Both of them vying for a top 5 finish. Both going for the same piece of tarmac, and unfortunately, both ended on the deck with
it's a double apex left-hander, that, and it just tightens up, I think. You go through 16, which is a long, winding left, and then it tightens up a little bit as to what we call turn 17, and it's that little left kink that has caught those 2 riders out.
They only had 100 metres to go to get to the checkered flag. I think if it was a little bit of a calmer incident, they'd have been able to pick up the bikes and run across the start-finish line and possibly scramble a point or 2. But as a result of that, it's Harrison Voigt that takes the final podium place. Back-to-back podium finishes for the Australian. He picked up his first ever podium in Jerez in the opening race there, so it's not officially back-to-back podium finishes. Kind of is at back-to-back rounds, but a superb performance from the Australian, starting from his first ever front row, and was able to battle in front of experienced European Talent Cup riders like Ivan Ortola, Morelli and Cruces to take third place with that super move, the dive down the inside into turn 16, and was able to hold it through 17 as well, despite pressure coming from Ortola, eventually finishing just 0.3 of a second adrift. Fastest lap of the race, incidentally, did go the way of Alvaro Carpe, a 2:03.834. That's about 0.2 of a second adrift of the lap record here in Aragon, set by Izan Guevara this time last year. But the grids for race 2 and race 3 tomorrow won't be set by fastest laps. It will go by what we saw in qualifying yesterday. So van den Goorbergh will start from pole position once again later this afternoon, where we'll hope to bag a hat-trick of European Talent Cup victories. A hugely important win for Zonta van den Goorbergh. David Alonso's championship lead now cut down to 38 points. with Alberto Fernandez having to salvage 7th place. He'll take 9 points for that. So having been 52 behind, he's now only 41 adrift. 43 adrift as well. So we do have ourselves a championship fight at long last, despite it looking like David Alonso, having never finished outside of the top 2 up until today, has finally made a mistake. And his closest championship rivals have pounced on it. 5th in the end going to Angel Piqueras. As Lewis rightly said, that is certainly contender for ride of the day from Piqueras, the number 18. Only 13 years of age, the man that has won back-to-back championships, the pre-Moto4 championship here in Spain, and then the Moto4 championship last year. He's really touted as a name to keep your eye on over the next couple of years, and you can exactly see why there, having picked up 5th place despite a 6th place grid penalty and a long lap penalty. Here's the race winning overtake then. A mature ride from Vanden Goorbergh. Carpe closed him down, cut his advantage, which was over a second at one point, and passed him pretty comfortably. But Vanden Goorbergh sat in behind him, followed him for a couple of laps, regrouped and went again, to eventually take victory by 3.5 seconds. Only a 2nd career win, but you can see as he came across the line just what it meant to him. The celebration's going on all the way down the start-finish straight. It's still going now. At some point, you are going to have to brake Zonta into turn 1. I think he probably ran wide. Definitely missed his braking marker there. Getting a little bit carried away, but who would excuse him for it as well? He's got every right to be celebrating as wildly as that one. Starting from pole position and taking the race victory by 3.5 seconds. Dominant display from the Dutchman here in Aragon. We'll be hearing from him very shortly as well. After back-to-back victories, there he is, making his way over to our TV
yeah, the
set
race was
here.
good. In the beginning, I had a good start, and I was pushing the first couple laps, and then the second guy closed in on me, and by the end of the race, my pace was a little bit better, and at the end, P1, so it's good.
Zonta, back-to-back victories, and with David Alonso not scoring in that race, do you feel you're now back in contention for the championship?
No. The gap was like 54 points, I think. So, or he needs to crash the next race as well, but otherwise the chance will be 0. But I wasn't sure if it was him because I saw him walking away, but at the end it was him then.
Yeah. Well done.
Thank you.
Oh, well, he doesn't think he's going to pick up his championship despite David Alonso crashing out. He jumped the gun as well. He didn't even allow Lewis to ask him a question. He was that delighted to let everybody know just how he picked up that victory. And here is exactly how he took victory here in Aragon. Starting from pole position, he took the whole shot and didn't look back from there despite being put under mounting pressure from Alvaro Carpe. On the opening lap, there was an incident for Dean Berta as he got caught up in a crash with Noah Detweiler as well, with Marco Morelli battling his way through from the 3rd row of the grid to get into podium contention, fighting with David Alonso over 2nd place as Vanden Goorbergh started to clear off at the front. But then suddenly from nowhere, the number 83 of Alvaro Carpe popped up, taking 2nd place, and with David Alonso trying to go with him, the front end folded from beneath him at turn 13, leaving an opportunity for Vanden Goorbergh and the rest to close his championship lead down. Carpe would break clear of the battle for the final podium place, setting his sights on Vanden Goorbergh, eventually catching the Dutchman. Meanwhile, an almighty scrap will begin to ensue for 3rd place. Carpe hit the front at around half race distance as the 83 and 84 got a good look at each other for a couple of laps before then Vanden Goorbergh decided it was his time to make his move for victory. This dive under the inside into turn 1 would eventually prove to be the race-winning overtake, taking the checkered flag by over 3.5 seconds as he broke clear in the final stages. This is the crash that saw Tyler Scott and Sharil go down. Scott took in the front at turn 2, and unfortunately Sharil getting caught up in it. And then on the final lap, with Van den Goorbergh and Carpe taking first and second. There was contact between Adrian Cruces and Marco Morelli, with the pair of them going down and Harrison Voigt being able to take the final podium place. But it was back-to-back wins in the European Talent Cup for Zonta Van den Goorbergh. Official confirmation of the first race of 3 in the European Talent Cup here at MotorLand Aragon, with Zonta Van den Goorbergh 3.5 seconds clear of Alvaro Carpe, with Queensland's Harrison Voigt taking a final podium place. Ivan Ortola was the unlucky man to miss out in 4th, with Angel Piqueras battling back from a 6th place grid penalty and a long lap penalty to take a top 5 finish. Well, we didn't get a chance to see who was in the top 10 there. I can tell you that the final top 10 place went to Dejira Sacco, with Alberto Fernandez, more importantly, keeping himself in championship contention with a 7th place finish. Further back, Milan Pawelec, Guillaume Planks and Philipp Ton, the German, who's also in the Red Bull Rookies this year, took the final places inside the top 20, with Marco Morelli and Adrian Cruces there crashing out on the last lap at the last corner, less than 100 metres from the finish line, throwing away any possibility of being inside the top 5. And most notably as well, a crash there for the championship leader, David Alonso. So here's the podium presentation, with one of the Team Super B mechanics coming out to take the team prize on behalf of Zonta Van den Goorbergh. 3rd place going the way of Harrison Voigt, a 2nd podium finish in the European Talent Cup for the Australian. It's a first ever trip to the podium for Alvaro Carpe. And for the 3rd time this year, Zonta Van den Goorbergh is onto the podium. And for the 2nd time in a row, he stands on the top step. 3rd place there for Harrison Voigt. Great ride from the Queenslander. An even better ride coming from the 13-year-old Alvaro Carpe. First ever podium for him in his debut European Talent Cup year. But it's victory for Zonta Van den Goorbergh in the first race here at Aragon. As a result, he will get the typical check from Repsol to help him on his drive back home on Sunday evening. $250, that will do nicely. And now the Dutch national anthem for Zonta Van den Goorbergh.
Okay, congratulations, Zonta Van den Goorbergh.
I couldn't put it better myself. Congratulations, Zonta Van den Goorbergh. A 2nd win of the year, and this one is most dominant yet. And with all the guys on the podium under the age of 18, it will be the fizzy water that gets sprayed off the podium here in MotorLand Aragon, but they won't be wanting to get themselves too wet, because it's back to business in just 2 and a bit hours time. We've race 2 of the weekend for the European Talent Cup, finishing our day's action here in Alcanyeath. So here's how the championship looks then, after a first mistake of the year from David Alonso. It was 52 points, it's now 38. Zonta Van den Goorbergh there saying that no, he's not going to win the championship, he's got no chance. But I beg to differ, Lewis. Now down to 38 points, with still 4 races remaining in this championship. 100 points on offer, anything can still happen. And we've seen already today, and indeed yesterday, that it does appear as if Van den Goorbergh just has a net pace advantage, certainly over Alonso. And this is going to be the first adversity that Alonso's faced all season, so it'll be interesting this afternoon in race 2 to see just how he responds to that. Can't discount Alberto Fernandez as well. He was super impressive at the start of the year with 3 back-to-back podium finishes that sees him in contention. He does drop from 2nd down to 3rd in the championship chase, now 43 points adrift, but he's still well in contention if he can get a better run at it this afternoon. His biggest thing is he's got to be able to go with the leading group. He can't get caught up in that battle that was for 8th place, but eventually turned out to be the battle for 5th. Further down, you can see Jacob John Ralston there. 19th overall, 12 points to his name. I think that was probably the best result of the year coming from the Australian. But it was another fine performance from Zonta van den Goorbergh. The Dutchman back on top in the European Talent Cup, cutting David Alonso's lead down to just 38 points with another race coming later this afternoon.